She thought she was untouchable. The spoiled daughter of a billionaire walked into court with diamonds in her ears, arrogance in her voice, and no fear of the law. She laughed at the charges, mocked the judge, and even bragged that her father's money would set her free. But what happened next left the entire courtroom stunned and the world speechless. Because for the first time in her life, Tiffany Langston learned that justice is not for sale. "Do you even know who my father is?" The arrogant words cut through the hushed air of the courtroom, each syllable soaked in entitlement. Every head in the gallery turned toward the young woman standing at the defendant's table, their eyes wide with disbelief. She wasn't an ordinary defendant. She was Tiffany Langston, the only daughter of billionaire real estate mogul Charles Langston. Her reputation had preceded her. Designer clothes hugged her frame. Glittering diamond earrings caught the courtroom lights, and the way she tilted her chin screamed superiority. She walked and spoke like someone who had never once tasted accountability. For years, Tiffany had been splashed across tabloids and gossip blogs. Wild parties, reckless behavior, speeding tickets. She was a headline magnet. But every time, the consequences vanished. Lawyers were bought, fines disappeared, and apologies were written by publicists instead of Tiffany herself. That morning had been no different. She had been pulled over for driving, her luxury sports car at twice the legal speed limit, and worse, she had nearly struck a pedestrian in a crosswalk. To most people, it would have been a terrifying wake-up call. To Tiffany, it was a joke. Hours later, she had posted a video to her thousands of followers, laughing about the incident. "Rules don't apply to me," she bragged, flashing a smug smile into the camera. Her fans either cheered or shook their heads, but none of them expected what would come next. Because Tiffany's case had landed in the courtroom of Judge Marcus Hill, and Judge Hill was not the type of man to be intimidated by money or names. At 53, Marcus Hill had earned his place on the bench through grit, wisdom, and an unshakable commitment to fairness. He had grown up in a working-class neighborhood, worked through law school, and fought against discrimination in his early career. To him, the law was sacred, something that belonged to everyone equally, not just the privileged few. As Tiffany stood before him, rolling her eyes and muttering under her breath, "This is a waste of my time," a collective gasp swept across the room. No one dared to show such blatant disrespect in Judge Hill's courtroom. But Tiffany smirked, convinced her father's shadow stretched far enough to protect her yet again. What she didn't realize was that this day, this courtroom, and this judge were about to deliver a lesson money couldn't erase. Judge Hill tapped his gavel lightly, the sound echoing across the courtroom like a warning bell. His face was calm, unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of years spent demanding respect for the law. "Miss Langston," he began in a steady, measured tone, "you are charged with reckless endangerment and violation of traffic laws." "How do you plead?" Tiffany smirked, flicking her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. With a dismissive laugh, she leaned back in her chair as though this was nothing more than an inconvenience. Obviously not guilty. "I mean, come on, Judge, this is ridiculous." "You're seriously going to waste everyone's time over a little speeding ticket? Do you even know how much my car is worth? I could buy this entire courtroom." The words hung in the air like poison. A collective murmur rippled through the gallery. Shocked whispers, gasps of disbelief. Even the bailiff, usually stoic and unshaken, clenched his jaw so tightly that the muscle in his cheek twitched. But Judge Hill didn't flinch. His composure remained rock solid, though his eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "You believe the law does not apply to you?" he asked, his voice low but piercing. Tiffany shrugged, her tone dripping with smug confidence. "Of course not. People like me don't get punished. Daddy makes sure of that. So why don't we just skip this little game and let me walk out?" The arrogance in her voice filled the courtroom like a foul stench. Many in the gallery shook their heads in disbelief, some even whispering, "Unbelievable," under their breath. Judge Hill, however, stayed calm. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the bench, his gaze fixed on Tiffany. His words came slowly, but each one landed like a hammer strike. "Miss Langston, I want you to listen carefully. In my courtroom, your last name means nothing. Your wealth means nothing. Your father's power means nothing. Here we deal with truth, fairness, and justice." For the first time, Tiffany's smirk faltered. Her lips parted as though searching for a witty comeback, but the whispers in the gallery grew louder. For a split second, the untouchable heiress looked unsure, but pride quickly returned, and she rolled her eyes. Yeah, right. You're just trying to sound important. My dad will have me out of here in an hour. A long silence followed. Judge Hill picked up his pen, wrote a few notes deliberately, and then looked up with eyes as sharp as steel. His voice cut through the room, calm but carrying an authority that could not be ignored. Miss Langston, your behavior today is not only disrespectful, it is dangerous. You nearly took a life, and yet you stand here mocking the law, mocking this court, and mocking justice itself. Tiffany opened her mouth to fire back, but Judge Hill lifted his hand, silencing her instantly. His voice hardened. No, you will not speak until I finish. The room went still. Everyone in that courtroom, lawyers, reporters, spectators, leaned forward. Judge Hill's eyes never wavered from Tiffany's. The courtroom was so quiet that even the sound of a pen dropping would have echoed off the walls. Then, in a calm but commanding tone, he began to speak. Here is my ruling, he declared. You will serve 200 hours of community service, not at a luxury office, not at one of your father's buildings, but at the city's public hospital. You will work with patients who have suffered at the hands of reckless drivers. You will see the consequences of carelessness firsthand. Gasps spread through the gallery like a wave. Some people covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged approving glances. Tiffany's jaw nearly hit the floor. What? She shrieked, her voice shrill. You can't do that! That's disgusting! I'm not working in some dirty hospital with... Silence! Judge Hill's voice thundered as his gavel struck the bench. The sudden authority in his tone froze Tiffany mid-sentence. The arrogance that had dripped from her words, just moments earlier, seemed to crumble under the weight of his command. If you refuse, he continued firmly, I will have no choice but to impose jail time. The air grew heavy again. Tiffany's face drained of color. For the first time, the heiress, who had lived her whole life, untouchable, realized. Her money and privilege offered. No shield here. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. Judge Hill wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly, his words measured and sharp. Additionally, your driver's license is suspended for 1 full year. During that time, you will rely on public transportation. Just like the very citizens you believe you are above. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Some spectators couldn't hide their satisfaction. A few even smiled, nodding in agreement. To them, this wasn't just justice, it was poetic justice. Judge Hill raised his gavel once more. This court is adjourned. The final crack of the gavel echoed like a closing chapter. Tiffany stood frozen, her designer outfit doing nothing to mask her humiliation. The proud, arrogant posture she had carried into the courtroom was gone. Her face burned red as camera flashes exploded around her. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every detail. Her father's billions couldn't erase what had just unfolded. She had been humbled, stripped of her entitlement, and held accountable in front of the entire city. As the crowd began to file out, an elderly woman leaned down to her teenage daughter and whispered, "That judge just changed her life." And she was right. For the first time, Tiffany Langston had been forced to face a truth no amount of money could rewrite. Justice isn't for sale. And that's how the spoiled heiress finally learned her lesson. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.